We are in Athens, Greece, and we are hosted by the nice hotel of Grand Hyatt here in Athens. And we have with us Professor Andreas Papatheodorou. He is a professor in the Aegean University. He's the president of the Hellenic Aviation Society, and he's member of the executive board of the Hellenic Civil Aviation Authority.
Pleased to meet you, Theodore. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you also for being with us. So, Andreas, you are based in Greece. You are Greek, but you are an expert in aviation topics globally. So, aviation industry has been recovered, as it seems, after the COVID period. So, what is the information you have about that?
Well, as we all know, the industry was heavily battered by COVID-19, different levels in terms of collapse that we experienced from a passenger point of view, from a flight's point of view, and obviously in terms of revenue and profitability. 2020, 2021 were horrible years for the entire aviation business ecosystem. 2022 was better, but we still faced a few issues, and we're going to discuss them in a while. 2023 is expected to be far better. That means that airlines are very likely to have a profit this year. This is not sufficient, of course, to cover all the significant losses that we experienced during COVID-19 years, but at least they're moving in the right direction. Of course, what really matters is how all this is reflected at the level of the consumer, because at present we see that fares on average are higher than they used to be, which is, I would say, more or less expected, as airlines need to recover all the substantial losses they experienced before. But what also seems to be, I would say, perhaps worrying is customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction, because last year we experienced major issues in terms of the supply chain. We saw a very big number of delays. We experienced cancellations, problems with ground handling systems, and so on. It seems that this year we're also going to experience problems as well. Perhaps not as severe as what we experienced last year, but most probably we will still be far away from what is expected to be regarded as normality. So there's still some way to cover.
You mentioned about the rise of the prices of the airfares. Do you think that this is going to affect the tourism in general, the traffic in general, in the near future or later? Because the economy globally is not that great. So we are coming out of the crisis, out of the pandemic. The people are eager to travel, so they don't mind to spend a little bit extra on the flights. But what is going to happen in the near future?
You're absolutely right. I mean, 2022 and 2023 are still related to what we call revenge tourism. So people were confined and constrained during the pandemic, so they are eager to go and travel. And they're willing to spend more, even though this may not be good for the pocket eventually. But on the other hand, as you did mention, we are already in the middle of an economic recession, perhaps rising interest rates. So people with mortgages, for example, this may negatively affect them. Talking about 2023, so far we haven't seen any real problems, but I think that people have already thought about, if not reducing the overall travel, at least to reduce the level of expenditure. And perhaps in the years to come, it will be more difficult to sustain the sharp increase that we experienced in 2022 and 2023. And so I think that airlines should also take this into consideration. It's not going to be easy because, as I said, they need to recover from all the substantial losses that they've experienced in the previous years. They also need to take into consideration the environmental taxes and fees that are imposed. And inevitably, all these do affect the level of fares as well. So I don't think it's we have an easy solution. If people want to keep traveling, they should become more accustomed, let's say, to higher fares than in the past. And of course, because of the economic recession and so on, that would only be sustainable if they cut expenditure from other areas.
So you are traveling a lot. You are attending a lot of international conferences as a speaker. You are working with foreign airlines as an educator and trainer, and you are working with governments. What are the major issues of the airline industry that are worldwide, discussing?
Well, we have already discussed about fares, and I think a big issue that we also saw also before the pandemic is how we redefine revenue management. So in the past, we were talking about yield management, then we moved into revenue management, and revenue management used to be only about fares, but obviously now airlines develop themselves into what we call travel supermarkets. And if you go on an airline's website, you can buy everything.
True.
So I think that redefining revenue management, putting a lot of emphasis on ancillary revenue is very important. A number of airlines also now introduce what we call branded fares, which allow customers to have a clearer view of what they buy. So I think that airlines would like to put more emphasis into ancillary revenue and revenue management. On top of that, they also need to cut costs at different levels, starting with distribution costs. So in the airline sector, we keep talking about the NDC, the new distribution capability. That's about standardizing certain issues with respect to distribution. Airlines would also need to cut costs elsewhere, and as you may appreciate, further this may also cause supply chain conflicts, because what is an expense for an airline may be a revenue for an airport or an air navigation service provider or somebody else. So if airlines push for cost reduction on certain occasions, that might create a conflict. And so all these conflicts are inevitable to arise, and the aviation sector would need to deal with them.
So on another hand, we have another major issue that may require an investment from the airlines, which is sustainability, carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
SAF,
Absolutely. That's extremely important issue. It all started with the EU implementing what we call the ETS, the emissions trading scheme. That's implemented only within the EU because there were strong reactions from countries outside the EU. What we have now at a global level is the so-called CORSIA. So CORSIA is a scheme about reduction and also mitigation of carbon emissions, and it's endorsed and applied by ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. Now, as we all know and as we all experience climate changes here, we need to do something, but I think we should be very careful in terms of how we do things. So, first of all, we need to be realistic. So, electrification or the use of hydrogen are very important solutions. However, they're going to take years. It's not easy to have batteries for long-haul flights or to have huge storage facilities for hydrogen as well. So in the, I would say, immediate future, I mean in the next 5 to 10 years, most probably the emphasis should be on SAF. SAF is sustainable aviation fuels. Again, we need to understand that these are not expensive. It's also a matter of scale, but this is an area where airlines need to invest. However, the support of states should also be there, because don't forget what we've just said, airlines suffered a lot during the pandemic. They need to somehow recover. So the states should now be more proactive in terms of facilitating this green evolution and revolution in the airline sector. And again, we need global solutions and not solutions which are just at a fragmented level, because this may cause other problems.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have observed that there are some airlines that they are experimenting in reducing short-haul flights, exactly because they want to reduce the carbon footprint. And some supporters of the sustainability, involvement, they support that we should reduce as travelers the short haul trips that we are doing, especially let's say business travelers that we are traveling in Europe to attend a conference. Maybe we should have the conferences hybrid and stay at our office attending the conference from long haul. What do you think about that?
You know, it's quite a complicated issue, because on the one hand, we did experience what Zoom is and what teleconference is during the pandemic. So yes, it can sort out some issues, but I think that shaking hands and having the direct personal contact is something indispensable. So I don't think that business travel will be entirely, let's say, substituted by teleconferencing. It should be there, and it can facilitate not only business transactions but help the society as a whole. Now, if we talk about different transport modes, within Europe, for example, we have seen lots of developments with respect to high-speed railway. The European Commission has set a target that for distances up to 800 kilometers, great emphasis should be put on using a high-speed railway instead of flights. And we've seen, for example, that Air France KLM, they did receive support from the French state for to recover from COVID-19, but there were some strings attached, and some of the terms and conditions did refer to cutting down the domestic network of France in order to allow for high-speed railway to pick up. Now, of course, we need to consider that geography is of essence here. So perhaps you may be able to do that, let's say, between France, Germany, or between France or Spain or Benelux and so on. But if you talk about Greece, we have so many islands. By definition, we cannot rely on trains. So for countries that are characterized by what we call geographical discontinuity and so on, aviation will still be of essence. And I don't think that reducing aviation when it's necessary is a solution. The idea is to find clever solutions and allow for carbon emissions where it is achievable and where it is realistic, and on other occasions let aviation grow in a sustainable manner, of course.
And one last topic, you mentioned earlier about the problems we observe in services, in airports and airlines. Maybe this is due to the lack of staff, of personnel after the COVID period. How do you think the airlines and the airports are dealing with this? And do you think technology can help in covering some of these areas that we lost the staff?
Technology can help for sure in terms of automation. So lots of automation has been introduced by both airlines and airports. Also, we see the rise of artificial intelligence. Airlines, for example, during COVID-19 started setting up chatbots as not necessarily a substitute, but a complement to the service centers, just because they were overwhelmed by people, having queries and so on. So automation and artificial intelligence can certainly help. At the same time, we need people. That's for sure, especially when we talk about ground handling. And problem is that many of these people were made redundant during the pandemic. I'm sure you've heard about the so-called big resignation and how people decided to change career or not to work at all. I think it's of essence to bring these people back into the industry and somehow inspire them and let them know that this is a decent job, it's something that is necessary and recognized by the entire sector.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful.